exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome to a whole new week of On the Money. We're focused here on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be taking a closer look at Rishi Sunak's spring statement, widely criticised as not doing enough to help poorer households. As the Chancellor appears before the Treasury Select Committee of MPs this afternoon, many are asking, is Dishy Rishi still flavour of the month? We test the mood here on The Money after the GB News headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Liam, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. Ukraine says the war has cost £430 billion in damages and losses so far. Fighting continues in the southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor estimates about 160,000 people are still trapped there without heating. Speaking from Kiev, Ukraine's former ambassador to the EU, Konstantin Yuliziev, told GB News his country needs more support.
We need military equipment. We need anti-air equipment. We need anti-tank, weapons. Of course, we need fighter jet. This is with what we can accelerate the victory of Ukrainian armed forces. And here we count very much on you. And secondly, we expect from our partners to increase the level of sanctions. The sanctions must be devastated.
Here, the government is urging public sector bodies, including schools and councils, to review any contracts they have with Russian firms and consider switching suppliers. It says public money should not be funding President Putin's war machine. The former Prime Minister, David Cameron, says Russia's president needs to face justice.
What Putin is doing belongs in another century, and frankly, he belongs in front of a war crimes tribunal. It is so appalling, and it's not as if we're getting sort of inured to it. Every day you switch on the news and more unbelievable, terrible things are happening in terms of bombing hospitals and schools.
Britain and Australia are joining forces to send humanitarian aid to Ukraine, with the first of 2 planes heading to Poland tomorrow. The UK has also sent a shipment of British military supplies to NATO to bolster security in the Baltic Sea. Royal Navy vessels brought vehicles and equipment to resupply the battle group in Estonia. The government says it will change the law to prevent the P&O Ferries sackings. The Transport Secretary has told the company he also plans to block attempts to pay workers less than the minimum wage. In a letter to the Chief Executive, Peter Hebblethwaite, Grant Shapps wrote he still has the opportunity to offer all 800 sacked workers their jobs back on their previous terms. An Irish businessman has been jailed for 21 years for drug smuggling. Thomas Kavanagh, who was arrested at Birmingham Airport in January 2019, was described by prosecutors as the head of an organised crime gang. He pleaded guilty to conspiring to import Class A and Class B drugs, as well as money laundering. Matt Horn from the National Crime Agency says the gang imported more than £30 million worth of cocaine and cannabis.
We have dismantled this organised crime group. They were operating using an extensive overseas network to import drugs and firearms into the UK on an industrial scale. They thought perhaps that they were untouchable, but we've shown here that that is absolutely not the case.
The trial of an alleged terrorist accused of murdering Sir David Amess has been halted. It's after 3 jurors tested positive for COVID. The defence for Ali Harbi Ali had been due to start today at the Old Bailey, but the judge adjourned the trial for a week after learning several jurors had fallen ill. The government has ceded control of NatWest Group for the first time since buying a majority share during the financial crisis. The Treasury has sold £1.2 billion worth of shares, taking its stake to below 50%. The government poured money into what was Royal Bank of Scotland in 2008 to prevent it from collapse. Pupils in England who are at risk of falling behind in core subjects are to be offered targeted support, such as tutoring sessions. The school's white paper also requires all schools to teach for at least 32.5 hours a week by September 2023. And the government wants a proportion of primary school leavers meeting literacy and numeracy standards to go up from 65% in 2019 to 90% by 2030. British Airways has become the world's first airline to use sustainable aviation fuel produced on a commercial scale in the UK. It's been added to the pipes providing fuel to several airports, including Heathrow. Produced in Lincolnshire, the greener jet fuel will reduce BA's CO2 emissions by 100,000 tonnes. That's the equivalent of 700 net zero flights between London and New York. Well, there was drama at the Oscars, with Will Smith hitting the host Chris Rock during the awards ceremony, prompting the Academy to post a response, saying it doesn't condone violence of any form. The incident happened when Chris Rock made a joke about Will's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. It happened just minutes before Will Smith picked up Best Actor for his role in King Richard.
I look like the crazy father, just like they said. I look like crazy father, just like they said about Richard Williams. But love will make you do crazy things.
This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. But now let's get back to Liam and On the Money.
And coming up on The Money today, Rishi Sunak's appearing before the Treasury Select Committee as MPs dig into the details of the Chancellor's spring statement. Has Sunak done enough to help voters suffering from the UK's increasingly serious cost of living squeeze? Many think not. We discuss the realities of what the Chancellor's statement means for you. Plus, the P&O Ferry crisis is ongoing, with Transport Secretary Grant Shapps threatening a package of measures to, quote, block P&O Ferries' plan to replace 800 seafarers with agency workers paid below the UK's minimum wage. We talk to union bosses to get their take. And today's On the Money Talks interview is with Ukrainian entrepreneur Maria Semikoz. She set up her website, What's in My Jar, to help customers sift through the thousands of skincare products available based on factors such as budget and skin sensitivity. Maria tells us how the Russia-Ukraine war has impacted her and her business and the devastating effect on her family. As ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @GBNews or message me @Liam Halligan. Stay with us. This is GB News on TV, DAB+, digital radio and online. I'm Liam Halligan and you're On the Money. We're heading for the biggest fall in living standards since the early 1950s. And Rishi Sunak's spring statement measures unveiled last Wednesday offset barely a third of that drop. So says the Office for Budget Responsibility, the official fiscal watchdog. And with the influential Institute for Fiscal Studies dubbing the Chancellor a fiscal illusionist for making claims that don't add up, some may say Dishy Rishi is no longer flavour of the month. Britain stands on the brink of an extended period of commercial and financial turmoil, as an economy already struggling to recover from lockdown is hit by successive waves of price rises, seriously impacting living standards. As such, politics is about to get a lot more serious. The Russia-Ukraine conflict and related East-West standoff is upending the UK economy. The importance of Russian commodity exports means the cost of living is surging across Britain as fuel and food prices rise. UK inflation was at a 30-year high before this war. Now, while economic growth stumps, prices are spiralling even higher. Broken global supply chains means recovering from lockdown was always going to be tough. But sanctions on Russia and Moscow's countermeasures have made that tougher still. Back in October, when the Chancellor delivered his autumn budget, UK GDP was set to grow at 6% this year. The spring statement growth projection was cut to just 3.8%. And the official inflation forecast for 2022, that was 4% last autumn. It's now 7.4%. So the cost of living squeeze is set to get tighter still. Sunak stands accused by some of not doing enough in this spring statement to help poorer, more vulnerable households, particularly across those red wall seats in the North and Midlands, which the Tories won, often for the first time in 2019, which they need to hold to keep their Commons majority. Benefits are set to be uprated just 3.1%, much less than the 7.4% rate of inflation the spring statement confirmed. It also offered no additional help with households for their energy bills, even though the war in Ukraine is causing fuel prices to spiral. And Sunak's biggest in decades, 5p a litre fuel duty cut on petrol and diesel has in many cases not been fully passed on by retailers. Sunak's allies say he's pressing ahead with the rise in national insurance contributions now so he can build up a war chest and then cut the basic rate of income tax by 2023 or 2024, just before an election. Others would say raising taxes just to lower them again in a year or two seems a bit too clever by half. The Resolution Foundation says 1.3 million more people will be plunged into absolute poverty by these spring statement measures. So as numerous families suffer, and with a lot more to come over the coming months, political game playing looks irresponsible and indulgent. And that's today's On the Money question. Dishy Rishi, is he still flavour of the month? Well, let's start this conversation with Tom Hunt. He is the Conservative MP for Ipswich. Tom, great to have you on the show. Let's start talking about how the energy crisis is impacting your constituents there in Suffolk.
Yes, I mean, it certainly is. This weekend, I had a good 4 or 5 hours knocking on doors in my constituency in a fairly in a part of town where there are significant pockets of deprivation. And it certainly was a topic that came up on the doorstep through my casework, the letters and emails I received from constituents. It is probably the number one issue at the moment. So this is something I am concerned about. There are, I think it's unfair to say that the statement last week didn't provide any help for my constituents who are struggling, because it did. There's another question about whether it was enough. And I think over the weekend we heard some proposals for what might be done in addition to what was announced last week, which I welcome.
Absolutely fair statement, Tom. The Chancellor did raise the threshold at which national insurance will be paid by about £3,000. That will help lower income workers, as long as they are working, of course. Meanwhile, though, benefits are only going up by 3.1%, while inflation is much higher. I completely accept the Chancellor did something for lower income constituents of yours and across the country, but I've had an awful lot of messages from your fellow backbench Tories suggesting that the Chancellor hasn't done enough.
I think that often I hear my constituents say that they can't think of a prime minister who's had to deal with so much since he became prime minister. And I think that's the same fair point in relation to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who I think, you look at the things that he's had to deal with since he came from being quite a less known member of the cabinet. He became Chancellor at probably the most challenging time to become Chancellor. I think he did an incredibly good job throughout the pandemic. And then straight after the pandemic, he's now got inflation higher than it's ever been. And of course, it's not just here, it's across the world. Plus he's now got the war in Ukraine and Russia, and as you've just explained, how that impacts the cost of living. So, I think what was announced last week by the Chancellor, I think particularly on national insurance, but also a fuel duty cut, are beneficial. But I think that the Chancellor was clear also, though, in saying that we are not chained to just a budget and spring statement. The idea you cannot make significant interventions outside of these statements is incorrect. And I think it may well be the case that he might have to do more. We heard over the weekend some ways on council tax, some ways in which he might be able to do that. But he needs to be nimble and he needs to respond rapidly. And to be fair, he has proven to done that. He has proved that he's able to do that in the past. So I think it is very likely, though, that he'll have to do more. And I think that he will be prepared to.
You are an assiduous constituency MP, Tom, by reputation. Do you think the political centre, do you think the ministers and the top civil servants really get the extent of this cost of living crisis coming down the track as energy bills go up 54% at the beginning of April, just a couple of days away, as taxes go up on the 6th of April as the fiscal year begins? Do our political class really get that?
I think they do. I think that we're with Chancellors in a very tricky situation, though. I think we have to appreciate that. And, what I did see over the weekend was a lot of criticism of the statement, but actually very few concrete ideas and proposals for what would actually be done that could be better and affordable. We are in a situation where the government spent over £400 billion on the consequences of COVID. The challenge we have with cost of living is not disconnected from the aftershocks and effects of COVID, and also what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. So this isn't a straightforward situation. We cannot borrow cheaply anymore. We're spending over £80 billion a month, I think, on debt interest. So that isn't an easy option open to us either. Then there's a question about whether we should focus on tax cuts, which I personally think we should. If there's any further help we can provide, I would like it to be focused on tax cuts. And I think that would help cost of living. But I don't think that I think the Chancellor does understand the seriousness of the situation, and so do my colleagues. And I do not think that this will be the end of the support that will be provided. I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to have to respond. We're going to have to be nimble to support our constituents through this difficult time, because we're paying unprecedented levels of money for energy bills. I've spoken to, I've had a number of constituents have long conversations with me about the stresses and the strains that they're feeling, and the anxieties it's causing them in a way it's impacting their mental health. And I think it's also important, may I add, that energy companies act with humanity and decency when they're dealing with their customers. And I've already had examples of where this sadly hasn't been the case. But I think that the Chancellor will prove that he will act nimbly and quickly. He's been a Chancellor for an incredibly difficult period. I think he's got most things right, and I think just because he's, some people don't think maybe he could have gone as far as he could have done last week, doesn't mean he can't rectify it. It doesn't mean he's not still an effective Chancellor, because I think on the whole he certainly has been. So I still think he's dishy personally, but I mean we'll see whether we can provide any further support.
Tom, you're such a tease. In a word, final question in a single word: a summer statement from the Chancellor? Yes, no, or maybe? Tom Hunt.
A summer statement would be unprecedented, but we're in unprecedented times. So very likely, I imagine, but time will tell.
Tom Hunt there, Conservative MP for Ipswich. Thanks for joining me. I'm joined now by Graham Stringer, Labour MP for Blackley and Broughton, as well as Callum Thompson, Chief Executive at Business Energy Claims, which help businesses to recover hidden commissions and losses from their energy contract. Also, friends of the show, the top team, it's Max King of Money Week, and it's Miss Blonde Money, looking very red today. Good to see you. Helen Thomas in the studio with us, and you were, of course, with us during that spring statement. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts. Let's go to you first, Graham, you're a pretty good judge of the political mood in my experience, Graham. Do you think Rishi Sunak did enough to help those red wall voters that the Tories need to keep?
No, and well, it's not really my business. I don't think the Conservative MPs think he did either. Certainly Labour doesn't. We think it was a pretty appalling budget that didn't do nearly enough. But the Conservative MPs I speak to are incandescent about the national insurance still being in the mix and the national insurance increase. So I think basically the Chancellor has made virtually everybody unhappy.
Callum Thompson, let's talk to you. Businesses don't have a cap on their energy bills, unlike households. It's going to get pretty nasty, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is, yeah. And it's going to have a detriment on all of us. I mean, the issue is just, as I say, it's exacerbating and it's perpetuating all of the time. Some of the traded prices at the moment that we're seeing, which of course can get passed on to businesses, unlike us at home, are astronomical. In some cases, north of 50p per kilowatt hour, so almost double that of the price cap for standard tariffs. So, you know, the suppliers, again, they're under immense pressure. Many of them not even offering prices at the moment, such as the volatility of the market. And as I say, as far as the end user is concerned, it's just going to have a huge knock-on effect for us in time to come.
Max, you wrote a piece in Money Week just before the statement saying that you think he shouldn't have gone ahead with this national insurance contribution increase, which he did then go ahead with, only to say, oh, but in a couple of years, I'm going to lower the basic rate of income tax. What's your response?
Well, I think he was completely focused on not doing any U-turns, and that was
sort of political optics.
Optics. But you have to say that the real problem here is that commodity prices around the world have gone up, and most of those commodities, including oil, gas, and many other commodities, are imported. And that means a hit to living standards. And the worst thing that a chancellor can do when there's an inevitable hit to living standards is firstly try and shuffle the paper around and try and pretend that you can avoid a hit to living standards. And that's what everyone's urging them to do. And the second thing is to try and dull the supply response by discouraging people from producing more energy domestically or more other commodities. So, you know, it's very hard to see what he could really have done. And most of the idea that he could somehow have prevented this hit to living standards is a complete farce. I mean, admittedly, much of that problem arose from the sort of gross extravagance of the COVID era, keeping furlough going for far too long and wasting so much money. If that hadn't been done, there might have been something he could have done, but there wasn't. So really, he was in the corner, and we should give him credit for raising the threshold for national insurance, and that was a strongly positive measure.
We're coming back to this after the break, but what is your initial response, Helen, the Monday after the Wednesday before, so to speak?
I take issue with this idea that he was backed into a corner and indeed that he's in a tricky position. Politics is about grabbing the opportunity, right? We have busted open what Conservative governments can do with what we've done over the last 2 years, perhaps wrongly, you might think, others might think, well, this was a chance to do a lot more, and he fluffed it, he didn't do it.
Your Blackpool roots are coming through here. You think he hasn't done enough for the Red Wall?
I don't think he's done enough for anybody. I mean, I think what I'm saying here is that crises create political opportunities. The best politicians grab them. From what we're seeing right now, Rishi did not take that opportunity.
Hold that thought, because we're coming back after the break. This is On the Money of me, Liam Halligan. We'll be reading out some of your emails. Also, my panel will be returning. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back on GB News TV and DAB Plus Digital Radio. It's 1:24. Today we're taking a closer look here on The Money at Rishi Sunak's spring statement. It's been criticised as not doing enough to help poorer households as the Chancellor appears before the Treasury Select Committee of MPs. Later this afternoon, we're asking, is Dishy Rishi still flavour of the month? I'm still with my panel here. Helen Thomas, Miss Blonde Money. Let's just talk a little bit about the politics of this. Has Rishi Sunak been captured by the Treasury? It's those Tory backbenchers who will make or break his leadership chances, as well as the Tory constituency party. How do his leadership prospects look now?
Well, he was trying to please everybody, and as we just heard from the Labour MP there earlier, he's pleased nobody, which is the worst way to deal with this politically. He was seen as this front runner, the next one for the leadership, and it's always the way that if you don't grab it at that moment, events, dear boy, events will take hold. And what he hasn't done in a political perspective is grab the narrative. You have to sell what you're doing, and you have to sell the message. What was the message? What was the message from last week? A bit here, a bit there. I can't afford this. I'll do more later. That's not what the country needs. That's not the message. He could have sold it slightly differently, but he is acting as if he's somebody who is constrained rather than flipping it on its head and saying, I'm going to go for this. This is what I'm going to do.
We just heard from Tom Hunt there, the MP for Ipswich, obviously very close to the Chancellor. He came on the show to support the Chancellor. Of course, we need that point of view. But won't it be a sign of weakness if the Chancellor comes back to the Commons in a few weeks' time to do another statement? As Tom Hunt is now saying is highly likely. He's not going to make up a phrase like that.
Exactly. And what I was sitting here thinking was, Liam, you and I have sat here since before Christmas talking about inflation and the cost of living crisis. So if he can stand up whenever to do it, why is it taking him 3 months and another month and another month?
Yeah.
What's been happening for the last quarter, even before this war? So that shows to me somebody who is not grabbing the political opportunity.
Graham Stringer, let's go back to you, Labour MP for Blackley and Broughton. You know the Red Wall well. It's where you operate politically. What can Labour do here? You've got a Labour Party that is obviously there to oppose and scrutinise. If you were advising Keir Starmer, your Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, what would you say to them the message should be?
Well, I think the first thing Labour always has to be in opposition is responsible. We can't just oppose everything without having an alternative. So we have to be very clear what is possible and what isn't possible. I agree with what Max said earlier, that part of the situation we're in now, the financial situation we're in now, has been caused by reckless expenditure, particularly during COVID, where tens, if not hundreds of billions of pounds were wasted to no benefit to people's health or anything else. We are still wasting money on the way we produce energy. We have neither secured security of energy supply, nor have we got energy as cheap as we possibly could. We're charging extra for using wind farms. If the wind's blowing very hard and you can't put all that energy into the network, then those wind farms have to be paid for energy that's never used. If the wind isn't blowing, the renewable obligations still have to be paid. So we need to look at the cost of energy, the unnecessary costs of energy at the present time, because energy prices are a fundamental part of the economy. If your energy prices are too high, then it is very difficult for energy to operate. We've already exported a lot of our heavy industry, aluminium, paper industry to other parts of the world. What's left of the steel industry is under enormous pressure. So we need to make sure not only that we can get electricity, but it is as cheap as possible, and we're not doing that. And I think that would be very popular with the people I represent, or amongst the poorest people in the country, and it would be very popular in red wall seats.
Callum Thompson of Business Energy Claims, almost the perfect voice to follow Graham Stringer there. I mean, with all respect to Graham Stringer, he's an extremely bright MP, but he absolutely doesn't speak for the leadership, almost as a badge of honour. Do you think Labour could move away from the net zero claims, Callum? Do you think business can help Labour and the political mainstream in general to stress energy security and energy costs a bit more and virtue signalling a bit less?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, increase our reliability on renewable energy as well. It's just been talked about, some of these additional costs that aren't necessarily associated to, the actual wholesale cost itself, which has been, again, it's been astronomical over the last sort of few weeks. But I think that we're going to have to, and again, just become a little more independent in that regard. Because otherwise, as I say, it's just going to continue to exacerbate. It's hard to see what the sort of light at the end of the tunnel with this is, because at the moment it's just perpetuating over and over.
Well, Callum, you're an important voice. You talk to hundreds of businesses about their spiralling energy bills. Good to have you on the show. Max, finally, for this section of the show, what caught your eye in the spring statement as being good news? You're a professional investor turned columnist turned TV pundit these days. What strikes you as could be sort of good going forward for people who are struggling to make ends meet, for entrepreneurs who are struggling to see how the UK economy is going to grow?
Raising the employee national insurance threshold is clearly very good news, and that paves the way for actually merging national insurance with income tax. And it just highlights the absurdity that you put up national insurance by 1.25% and you cut income tax by 1%. I mean, that's just absolute nonsense. So actually, the two should go together, and I think raising the threshold is a very important and long overdue step in that direction.
And if you were back in your old job of advising chancellors and shadow chancellors, what would be your suggestion for what we can put forward as the message to say to the public, battered by these cost of living rises, battered by this war, even though it's far away, it is impacting us. Where are the sunlit uplands?
Well, I think you have to do the two parts, which is admit it's a hit to everybody, as Max suggested earlier. We cannot escape this global issue, but we can help those who really need the help. And we're not going to muck about tinkering with these two different taxes, and we're not going to penalise workers. And, there's so much that just get the help where it's needed. And if necessary, painful as this might sometimes sound, others have to pay for it, which I know maybe not. Look, this is tricky for the Conservatives. It's tricky ground that they have to throw away. I stand here as someone who was a massive Thatcherite in the 80s. The world has changed. We've moved on. We spent $400 billion. Let's keep spending the right way to help the right people and not get us into a recession as a result of this inflation.
And a bit less net zero?
You have to take into account the climate considerations, but you've got to think long term, as we were just hearing from Labour MP.
It's not just about net zero carbon reductions, it's about reducing the dependence on hydrocarbons in general. That's the most important.
Oil and gas and coal in general.
Nothing about whether it's net zero or slightly positive or slightly negative carbon is not the point. It's about reducing hydrocarbon consumption.
And that's for security reasons, as we now well know, as much as it is for environmental reasons.
Given that a lot of those hydrocarbons come from places that are difficult. Max, Helen, you're staying here with me for the rest of the show. Thank you to Graham Stringer, Labour MP for Blackley and Broughton, and indeed Callum Thompson of Business Energy Claims. Two fabulous guests. Great to have you here on The Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, it's today's Money Talks. It's with a Ukrainian entrepreneur, Maria Semikoz. She's a skincare expert who'll be telling us about how her business and family has been affected by the war in Ukraine. All that after the GB News headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Liam, thank you. It's 1:33. Good afternoon from the GB Newsroom. Ukraine says the war has cost the country £430 billion in damages and losses so far. Fighting continues in the southern city port of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor says they're on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, estimating about 160,000 people are trapped in the city without heating. The Transport Secretary has told P&O Ferries he plans to block attempts to pay workers less than the minimum wage. In a letter to the Chief Executive, Grant Shapps said the company still has the opportunity to offer the sacked workers their jobs back on previous terms. Irish businessman Thomas Kavanagh has been jailed for 21 years for drug smuggling. Arrested at Birmingham Airport in January 2019, he was described by prosecutors as the head of an organised crime gang. He pleaded guilty to conspiring to import Class A and Class B drugs, as well as money laundering. The Sir David Amess murder trial has been delayed for a week after 3 jurors tested positive for COVID. The defence case for Ali Harbi Ali had been due to start today. He's accused of stabbing the MP to death in October last year. He denies murder and preparing acts of terrorism. British Airways has become the world's first airline to use sustainable aviation fuel, produced on a commercial scale in the UK. Produced in Lincolnshire, it's been added to the pipes, providing fuel to several airports, including Heathrow. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Liam and On the Money in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And here we are. Welcome back. It's 1:38. You're watching On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Now, on the show and across GB News in general, we've been following the P&O Ferries story closely, since 800 seafaring staff were made redundant in mid-March via a pre-recorded video call. And today, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps announced in a letter and a tweet to P&O's boss that this government, he said, will not stand by while the requirement to treat seafarers with due respect and fairness is brazenly ignored. Mr Shapps said the government will, quote, block P&O's plans to employ overseas staff at below minimum wage rates on UK routes. And the Transport Secretary reiterated calls for boss Peter Hebblethwaite to resign after he knowingly broke the law, as he admitted to a committee of MPs last week. Well, let's welcome back Charles Ball. He's the Director of Legal Services at Norseless International, a trade union representing 20,000-odd maritime professionals in the UK, Netherlands and Switzerland. And I'm still with Max and Helen here in the studio. Charles, let's ask you first. Grant Shapps says he's going to bring forward a package of measures. We know that maritime law does allow people to be employed with conditions that don't necessarily apply in the countries where those ships dock. So what's your understanding of what Grant Shapps and the government could do? Are we talking legal changes in order to, quote, block and thwart P&O's plans?
Well, you see, this is a misunderstanding by much of the public. These seafarers who were employed by P&O are were very much enjoying the benefits of the general UK employment laws. As I said on Friday, what determines whether they apply to these workers or not is whether or not the workers are based in the UK, which means where they join and leave their ferries, or in other cases, whether they have a sufficiently close connection with the UK. So we're talking about the former scenario here. As I said on Friday again, there is a wrinkle when it comes to the national minimum wage, because the government up until now have been taking the view that the right to transit traverse or transit the English Channel, in this case, being what's called the right to transit or innocent passage under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the government has taken the view that that bars them from imposing an economic condition on foreign flag vessels, like paying the national minimum wage. But I understand from the press over the weekend that the government now intend to extend the national minimum wage to ferries leaving the UK. So we very much welcome that development, although it won't completely solve our particular case, because our members were employed on terms and conditions very much higher than the national minimum wage. However, it is a welcome development as far as it goes, because it will at least raise the floor, if not certainly not the ceiling, when it comes to employing seafarers in the UK, and hopefully not make this quite as cheap as P&O expected to bring in these agency workers at an average of £5.50 an hour, and I understand the lowest rate was at £5.15 per hour, which was almost half the national minimum wage.
Brilliantly explained as ever. It strikes me there are going to be lots of complications with this. For instance, if the minimum wage legislation is indeed tweaked by the government, as you say, how about all the cargo ships, not ferry passenger ferries, but cargo ships docking in the UK, where you have people employed who could be from anywhere, could be from developing countries, as seafarers on cargo ships often are? Would that then mean that if they don't have sufficiently close connection with the UK, these new laws wouldn't apply?
Ships that are coming in just to discharge their cargo would not be affected by this. Coming into UK ports are many international seafarers who only come in for that purpose, short stays to discharge the cargo and go. They will not be affected by the national minimum wage amendment in this case, because they will then, they will be exercising the right to, a genuine right to innocent passage. But for regular ferries that go, several times a day from the UK to France, to benefit from this exception is quite artificial, I think. They're not so disconnected from UK employment law if they're going in and out of Dover some up to 8 times a day. So, there's quite a distinction here between ferries and cargo ships. And we believe that the draft amendments to the national minimum wage, when presented to us, will make this distinction clear.
Again, beautifully explained. Max King, what do you make of this? This is rapidly turning into a kind of test case, isn't it? Aside from the shock that people had when they heard of 800 people being sacked by Zoom with no notice.
Well, there's a broader issue, and that is that clearly P&O is bust. And it's, a lot of that's due to management incompetence, not taking action earlier enough. Some of it's due to COVID, but also it's due to inflation. That over time, the costs of a ferry are going to rise steadily.
They use a lot of diesel?
They use a lot of diesel, whereas the costs of a tunnel, because the costs are sunk, won't. And that means that the tunnel is becoming steadily more and more competitive with the ferries. And I don't see how the short-haul crossings from Dover to Calais or Boulogne can survive. I think eventually they're going to have to think about sinking a second tunnel, and I think short-haul crossings about as much future as the ferry across the Mersey.
But yeah, P&O, as you say, across the Mersey do go from Liverpool to Dublin. They do go from...
That's not across the Mersey, though. I mean, Birkenhead to Liverpool.
OK, they do cross the Irish Sea, and they cross the Irish Sea from Scotland, of course, to Larne in Belfast as well.
There's no tunnel. So
is there going to have to be nationalised ferries to...
I think the longer haul routes clearly will survive, but, where there's no tunnel competition. But on short haul routes, I don't see how they can survive.
What do you think, Helen?
I think it is indicative of the broader inflation issue we have been talking about, but also another common theme when I'm in here, which is the new world, the new way we live and we travel and we transport ourselves and how we want to get about. So, frankly, some businesses will not and should not survive. And I fear, however, that however well-intentioned this intervention might be, the consumer ends up paying, because if we are going to end up with higher wages, albeit maybe not even minimum wage or whatever, then how is P&O going to survive? It's going to have to pass that cost on, isn't it? So, unfortunately, it's all rather part of the same story. Even if we can get what maybe feels like a victory for the worker, does it hit the consumer in the pocket?
Charles, last word to you. What do you think is going to happen here? This is obviously a very complex situation playing out in the sort of citadel of high politics with the Transport Secretary firing off tweets. But how do you think this is going to work out?
If employment laws are not amended to sort out a situation like this now, then they never will be. This mass sacking seems to have hit a raw nerve with the entire country, and I do believe that the time is right for unions to lobby the government to try and get favourable amendments to employment law. And I really do think they will follow on from this case. Unlike your speaker earlier, I really do think there is a future for ferries. I don't think the solution is to have more tunnels under the channel. I just think that this is mass mismanagement by P&O. I don't think it's loss-making. Perhaps there's some tax reasons why they've sorted it out like this, but the holding company, DP World, is certainly very, very profitable. So I don't believe that the British public should be looking to get cheaper ferry services by selling British seafarers jobs. This is ridiculous, and it must be reversed.
Well, Charles Ball, Director of Legal Services at the union Nautilus, thanks a lot for joining us here on The Money. Your contributions are extremely valuable. We look forward to hearing from you again soon. And indeed, Max King of Money Week and Helen Thomas, Miss Blonde Money. Great to have you on the show as ever. Until the next time, have a good week. It's time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. Now, last year, the global beauty market was valued at nearly £400 billion. Yep, that's 400,000 million pounds, proper money. And skincare is growing faster than any other part of that already massive beauty industry. But with so many brands and products to choose from, I know I have trouble. It's a crowded and sometimes confusing market. That's why in 2019, Ukrainian-born entrepreneur Maria Semikoz founded What's in My Jar. It's a free-to-use website that aims to make the sometimes bewildering choice of skincare products easier to understand, tailored to individual needs and budgets. And here to tell us more, it is Maria Semikoz. She is my latest guest on Money Talks. Maria, thank you so much for coming on my show. I would really like to meet you properly and talk in less difficult times for you, for your family, for your country. You are on the show as a businesswoman. I'm very keen to talk about your business, but let's just start off by asking you how this war has affected you and your family personally.
Thank you so much for having me. Unfortunately, my family is touched very personally. My dad got killed in a Russian shelling a couple of days ago. And luckily, we were able to evacuate the rest of my family, and some of the family still remains in safer areas of Ukraine. But it has been a tough time for me personally, but most importantly for people on the ground. And as we speak, my hometown is being literally razed to the ground.
Well, our heart goes out to you, of course. You have our deepest condolences. I think it's because of people like you, your energy, your entrepreneurial spirit, that your country will rebuild, that we will move on to better times. And I know a lot of people in my country you and your fellow Ukrainians are very much in our thoughts, albeit we're a long way away. But let's talk about your business. That's what we're here to do. Why did you start What's in My Jar? Good name, by the way.
Thank you. I was working in data science and learned diets, and I got into skincare as a hobby. But I tend to dig deep into a rabbit hole of reading kind of first-hand sources and medical journals. And I understood that so many claims around skincare products are not grounded, and it's very hard for consumers to understand how to actually select skincare products that work, how to select a good skincare regime. And the reality is that you can absolutely build an effective skincare regime based on products that are available over the counter in most countries in the West. And you just need to have specialized knowledge in that, which of course consumers do not have. And this is why we started What's in My Jar. So we combine our knowledge in dermatology, we work with dermatologists, and our data science expertise with technical machine learning skills to build an algorithm that really helps people find out which skincare product works, how to build an effective regime, and do it on their own terms. So we're not affiliated with any particular brand, which makes it easier for people to find products that fit into their lifestyle, also their budget. And really our mission is to help people feel more confident in their skin. And I believe that we are part of the revolution in skincare industry, that we are approaching skincare as part of well-being, of wellness, of getting people feel better about their appearance, rather than having predating on their insecurities, be it acne or any other skin issues.
This is Money Talks, of course, so let's follow the money, Maria. Who pays you? Do users of your website pay you, purchasers, people looking to purchase skincare products? Do you actually retail those skincare products on your site, or is it just an advisory service? And do the providers of those skincare products pay you to feature on your site? How does it work?
Yeah, so our business model is basically creating the platform, and we are looking for partnerships with brands and with skincare brands and retailers who can that are aligned with our mission, that are interested in evidence-based skincare, and we are offering sponsored content and sponsored opportunities that are really clearly labeled for our consumers. So our website is very transparent, but at the same time, we do provide advertisement spots and sponsored content spots for interested brands. We also offer a white label solution, so that the technology that we've developed, it's available for as a white label apps for skincare retailers and brands as well.
Now, you're joining us from Dubai. You're a busy person. That's just where you happen to be at the moment. But your business is based in the UK. Apart from your superb English language skills, why did you choose the UK as a place to base What's in My Jar?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I was there. I had a chance to work for in UK in consulting before starting my business. But the reason why we found it in UK was actually an extremely easy process to register a company, and we also took advantage of the of some of the investment opportunities that UK can provide to startups. So so that basically the first investment round. We were able to offer our first investors a small tax advantage if they are investing in what's in my jar. Actually, we didn't even fully booked out the round. We're pretty much bootstrapped at the moment, but I would say that legal framework in the UK is quite favorable if you're starting the company. Also, I think the banking infrastructure with so many banks like Revolut and others available, and they are making it easy to open a bank account. So some of the things that as a young entrepreneur building a tech startup, you don't want to worry about, lots of bureaucracy. And I think UK made it easy to start company, and I really appreciate this framework.
Just in a nutshell, Maria, you have still got family in Ukraine. Some of your family are fighting. Our thoughts are with them, as I'm sure yours are. But just in a nutshell, what would you say to those who are watching us, listening to us? Oh, skincare, it's not a real business, is it? What would you say to them in terms of validating your business and the sector that you're working in?
Well, I mean, it's very easy. Skincare is our real physical interface of interacting with each other and with the real world. And it's just the fact, you think about the sense of touch. If you're touching something, that's your skin giving you a signal. And that's why skin is so central to how we feel about ourselves. It's central to our perception of ourselves in the world. And that's why skincare will continue to grow, because it's from just more of a gender-specific beauty industry, it's becoming a real wellness industry. So if you are investing in this space, definitely watch it. And I think there is a reason why skincare is growing regardless of the macroeconomic situations or microeconomic factors. And it's just natural that the more wealthy people become, the more educated they become, the more they want to take proper care of their skin. And in addition, of course, we are living longer, which is great. It means that we also want to look at our best longer, and that definitely drives consumer demand for evidence-based skincare and skincare that truly works.
Well, Maria Semikoz, founder of What's in My Jar, thanks a lot for joining us here on Money Talks. All the best to you and your family at this tough time, and all the best for your business. That's all we've got time for today. No time for emails, sorry. We'll bring you back more of those tomorrow. Do keep writing to us. Thanks for joining me. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was Monday's edition of On the Money.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern. We've started the day with some dense fog in places. That's now clearing. Then it's another dry day for many, but it's a lot more cloud in the sky for some, and a few showers developing. Showers already starting to form across parts of southern Scotland and northern England.